Have you ever wondered if it matters whether or not you put the wood chunks above or below the charcoal? Well, today we're going to test it and find out. And I'm shooting this part after I've already done the test, and unlike most barbecue arguments, there are differences. You're going to have to stick around to find out what they are. Grill Top Experience subscribers voted and they chose to do this comparison with briskets. If you want to have some input on what we do on this channel, consider subscribing. So I went to the big box store and they were completely out of briskets out on the floor, but I caught the butcher and asked him if he had any. He went and grabbed some straight out of the back, and to my surprise, he grabbed 2 of the biggest briskets I've ever cooked. Now, I normally wouldn't have picked something that big because they're a little bit more unwieldy to cook, but I got them trimmed up and got them on the kettle, and this is how we set it up. I started each kettle off by putting a dozen briquettes in the slow and sear and filled the water reservoir with hot water. Setting up the fire this way gives me a chance to let it run without the risk of the fire getting too big. I split 3 wood chunks in half and put a piece of each in each kettle. I put the wood under the coals in one kettle and on top on the other. While that was going, I finished trimming the briskets and saved the fat to render it down for a future video. Each brisket was covered with a simple rub of salt and pepper. Out of the kettles, the one with the wood under the coals got to good smoke first, while the other needed a little bit more time. I kept the temperatures in sync throughout the cook so that way they would cook at the same rate. And these briskets were way too big for the kettles, so I draped them over a log for the first 2 hours or so, and that's a good trick to avoid the juices pooling on top and getting an uneven bark. I'm only a couple of hours into the cook and I'm already seeing a big difference. One of the things that people said is that if you put the wood underneath the coals, you're going to get good smoke faster. And I saw that was absolutely true. This kettle with the wood underneath got good smoke faster. Not only that, but after we had good smoke, a little while later, the ones that had it on top, that second wood chunk fired up and produced more smoke. Now that's not to say that the smoke coming off of the wood that's on top is bad. It smells just fine. It's definitely the kind of smoke that you'd want on your meat. But the question is, how much will that impact the end product? Will it make a big difference or not? Which is another thing that people wanted to test. 6 hours later, it was time to wrap. Both briskets looked and smelled amazing, but the differences were starting to show. The brisket with the wood on top of the coals is much darker. Now this isn't a video of how to cook a brisket, but here's a quick overview of how I did it. I spritzed those briskets every hour for about 6 hours before I wrapped them, and then I put them inside in the oven at 225 degrees Fahrenheit until it reached tenderness. Once they were done, I put them in a cooler to rest until it was time for lunch. The wood over the coals brisket came out of the foil super dark, but it wasn't dried out. There was a ton of juices trapped inside both briskets, and each made amazing sandwiches. So we had a bunch of people over and we tested out the 2 briskets, and there are 2 big differences that we found. The one that had the wood on top of the charcoal had a much more pronounced bark. It was a lot crunchier and a lot of people really liked that, as well as it was way more smoky. It had a good, rich, wood-flavored smoke that was all over that brisket, whereas the other one was a little bit lighter. Harry Sue said that if you put the wood chunks underneath the charcoal, you'd get much better smoke. But we didn't notice any bitter or off-putting flavors with the one that had the wood chunks on top. It was just good, clean wood smoke. It was just stronger than the other ones. And that's not to say that the other brisket wasn't good. It still was. It just didn't quite have that same wood flavor that I like in barbecue. So when it comes to applying what we learned, the one thing that I might do different is if I didn't like the amount of smoke that was going on in my brisket, I might take those wood chunks and put it underneath to make it a little bit lighter smoke, because there's plenty of people that like barbecue that's like that. I'd also put them underneath if I needed to get cooking faster, because it got the good smoke going and you could get your brisket on sooner than if you put them on top.